This is Nick Ricada, and you're listening to a Sunset Sea production. It's better than whiskey.
All right, welcome everybody to episode 26 of the Imperial Tides podcast. As always, I'm Holden, and I'm joined today by my co-host Simone. And today we're going to be getting into episode 3 of 14 of Berlin Alexanderplatz, one of Renee Warner Fassbinder's major directorial works. And for those of you not inducted into the world of international cinema or whatever, Fassbinder is one of those people. He's one of those names, he's like an Alfred Hitchcock or a Kurosawa, someone like that, but for Germany. And so and I didn't actually know that when we were first watching this, but I've done a little bit of research, not too much. I'll do more towards the end of the series. When we get to the very end, we can talk about Fassbinder in general, but he's an interesting guy, and he's got a lot of work under his belt. So it's weird that we sort of stumbled into this without even knowing that there was a name behind it. But he's a pretty prominent director, and so it's interesting. You wouldn't really get that impression from I don't want to be mean, but it's just the production value. It seems like this would be one of his lesser known works or whatever. But I have a feeling that it's very high, very well regarded, held in very high esteem in Germany itself. It might just not have that sort of like broader appeal because of maybe what it comes. I don't know. Anyway, but we're gonna shed some light on it and talk about it today, as we always do. As always, we usher in these discussions with a brief summary, just a little play-by-play of what happened in the actual episode to catch everybody up to speed. So this is the third episode of 14. The title was "A Hammer Blow on the Head Can Injure the Soul." And it's a pretty fitting title considering what happens in the episode itself, right? So here we start out with Franz. It immediately transitions from episode 2, right? So Franz has just quit the Nazi newspaper business to work with his girlfriend, his Polish girlfriend Lena's uncle, whose name is Otto Ludin. And Otto Ludin, his wife died years ago. Lena hasn't seen him for 12 years. And he's been unemployed for about 2 years, over 2 years. But he has these sort of side hustles or whatever, chief among which would be selling shoelaces door to door. And he feels like it's a viable business model because, as he puts it in the show, there's always going to be a need for shoelaces. Everyone's always going to need them, right? And so that's what he does. He goes door to door selling shoelaces to people, and that's how he sustains himself. And so through Lena, he agrees to let Franz basically help him sell the shoelaces. And so Franz becomes a door-to-door shoe salesman. And through this, Franz ends up meeting a young widow who he engages in a short affair with. It's the first person he knocks on the door of, right? He goes, his first sale ends up being to this widow who sees her dead husband. She's recently widowed, right? So her husband just died, and she kind of sees her husband in Franz, and so they have this sort of understanding, and they have an affair, and she ends up paying him a lot of money for the affair. She doesn't buy any shoelaces, and in fact, Franz ends up leaving the shoelace merchandise at her apartment, and ends up coming back to the bar that he usually goes to. And he tells Otto about the experience, and he's really excited about it, and he trusts Otto. And Otto kind of takes that trust and betrays it, because then he comes back to the widow's apartment not long after, and basically tries to extort her because he wants to try to get sex from her too, but she's clearly not interested in him. She doesn't like him the way that she likes Franz, and so he kind of bitterly he robs her basically. He steals a bunch of money. He takes a bunch of things with him, and that ruins the trust that Franz and the widow had. It was a very short affair, but it could have been something more. And Otto took advantage of the situation to extort the widow, and that destroys the trust that Franz had established with her. And this affects him profoundly, and it actually ends up leading to his decision to run away from it all. To leave behind his closest friends in his social circle and just kind of start over again. He runs away, and because of this, his best friend Mech and Lena try to track him down, but end up arriving too late. Um, and it seems as though he may be out of their lives for good by the end of the episode. It seems as though there's a high probability that he's never coming back again, and that the rest of the series, not in the series. I mean, obviously the show is going to keep following him. I just mean in terms of his association with those characters, the rest of the series may follow him doing different things in different places. He may never come back to this, this sort of the place that's been established in the first 3 episodes, which is sort of like, I guess, his home. The apartment he used to have with his wife, this old life, the landlady, his best friend. He's gonna put all of that behind him, the bartender and everything, to kind of start fresh, wipe the slate clean and all that. And so yeah, in his absence, Mech and Lena decide to live together for the time being. And at the very end of the episode, Mech reveals that he actually has an attraction to Lena, and so that it kind of works out for him, I guess. But Lena still seems like she cares more about friends than Mech at the moment. But maybe that could change. And also during this episode, the only other noteworthy thing besides that, so that's the main plot. But then there was also a moment in which Franz and Eva, who's the woman who's been appearing in the other 2 previous episodes, kind of just as a recurring thing, they had another encounter in this one in which Franz basically knocks on the apartment that she's staying at, just trying to sell shoelaces, and it's sort of implied in this episode that she's some sort of prostitute or sex worker that he had an affair with, in a relation with, back before he killed his wife, right? And so to him, she sort of represents a past that refuses to not haunt him just constantly, and so she tries to buy shoelaces from him, and he leaves, and that's pretty much it. That's the episode, more or less. I don't know. Did I miss anything, Simone? Is there anything you'd like to add to any of that before we move on to the main discussion?
You told correctly all the events that took place.
It's also another, at the very beginning they had like a kind of a throwaway line that explained from the men from the previous episode. So when when Franz in last episode, when he was in the bar and he was being harassed by Dresk, his old friend Dresk and his crew, it was revealed that those guys were communists, right? And this is something that a lot of people, it's a weird little fun fact, I guess, but the Nazi Party, the National Socialist Party in Germany, were actually extremely anti-communism, right? And so that's why during World War II, Russia sided with the U.S. and Britain, the UK, because they had a common enemy, right? That's the only reason the big 3 ever came together. It was is mostly because I'm really speaking out of my depth here, but it's because the Nazis really didn't like communists. Believe it or not, they were still obviously fucking terrible people, but like, it's weird to think that, I guess it's weird to think that 2 different shades of evil, would be against each other like that. I guess, I don't know. It's interesting. But that's why Stalin worked with the worked with the other 2. But yeah, sorry, I'm just a little tired. But okay, so it would make sense, obviously, that the men in the bar wouldn't take too kindly to Franz being a newly inducted member of a group that doesn't like communism at all, and kind of wants communists dead. But yeah, and so there you have it. Other things just to go over real quick. I kind of, at the start of the episode, I made a prediction, right? So before anything even happened, I assumed, I based this off of the thumbnail, and this kind of sucks with YouTube, right? It's like, because we're watching this off YouTube, what kind of sucks is that, the thumbnails, they so far they've been pretty mundane, but I'm always afraid that they're going to give away something of the plot, right? And so for this week's episode, for today's episode, I thought, just because it's a thumbnail is just a still image of Lena sort of looking all distressed and stuff. So my prediction coming into this episode was that Franz was going to break things off with her, or Lena was going to leave him because he did something violent, or because he got involved in some criminal activity or something. And I guess in a way I was right, but I was right in not in the way that I expected to be. Things sort of happened that way, but in a completely different context, I guess. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. So I guess before we get into the real meat and potatoes of this episode, Simone, I wanted to ask, like, I don't know, did you have any predictions coming into the today's episode? And I don't know, were any of them proven right? Were any of them proven wrong? Like, how did things transpire based on what you assumed in your mind, and then what actually played out in the film? I'm just curious to see, to compare a little bit.
I made some predictions after I see, for example, the first 5 minutes of the shows, or three minutes of the show, because I think it is really connected from the second episode, exactly where the last episode ended, and this and it continues from this episode.
Yeah.
It was explained what is, that's just you mentioned about his friends that who turns out that are communists as well. They are against his new perspective, or the swastika that he wear.
Right.
And I made some predictions that things might change, that we might like this episode, because that it might not be more leans on the political side on particular era. For example, the Nazis, which is not a good prediction, not a good aspect or element in the second episode, because it doesn't work that well for me, or how the conversation last episode took place. But for now, I think I made some prediction that it would lead the way that I think that we might predicted the second episode. That's all those predictions took place in this particular episode.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that, because as always, we start out our discussions with me asking you what you would rate this episode out of 10 and why. But I'll go first this time, because you actually brought up a very good point. And I'll say that last episode I think I gave it like a 6 or a 7, but this one I've definitely got to give an 8. I've got to give it a solid 8, because it's much better than the last one was. And to me, just the last one, episode 2, it felt so out of place compared to the first episode and this one, the third one. And it's almost as if the second one sort of pushed pause on the real narrative and like took this weird detour into politics and stuff. And it just like, it was very, the inclusion of like the Nazi stuff was very heavy handed to me. I felt like it sort of came out of nowhere, and it didn't really contribute much to what was established already. I guess the narrative themes and the way things were going in Franz's life and all that. It was weird, and it just didn't have the effect that it probably should have. They were trying to go for they were probably trying to go for shocking, just spontaneous shocking. It comes out of nowhere. It shows up in a person's life, because that in life that's kind of how a lot of things work, right? Like in our lives, a lot of things just sort of change without us noticing them. And by the time it's too late, it's like everything's already radically transformed, right? That's about a jillion things, that's puberty, that's growing up in general, that's moving houses, that's going to college, that's graduating from high school, that's getting your first job, that's ending a relationship or starting a new one, So I understand that they're trying to go for that sort of that hyper realism, but it just didn't translate to the script writing itself. And so, and honestly, like, I guess just to take a common example, how in a lot of like anime shows, for example, like Bleach and One Piece, the big shows that have like 500 episodes or whatever, some ridiculous number, thousands of episodes, whatever, they have a lot of filler, and episode 2 for me of this, there's only 14 episodes, and it's like already one of them seems like a filler episode to me, at least to me. It felt like one of those things where it's like, well, because in anime they do it because the way that the companies work over there, they have to kind of, because, okay, I guess this is a big tangent, but it's worth explaining. So in Japan, right? So in the Japanese animation industry, or whatever you want to call it, they have this practice there where they basically, the way it works is they adapt directly from the manga, right? And so manga, that's like Japanese comic books, right? So it's everything, most anime shows are adapted from manga, which are comic books, right? So they adapt the comics, but sometimes you get these complications where it's like, the company or whatever, they want you to like wait before you spoil something that's like major in the manga, in the anime. right? Because they want to make sure that it gets syndicated as much as possible, so that as many viewers, get to see it and get to like be hyped, so that the numbers go up or whatever. Or sometimes it's the case that the manga isn't even written yet. The latest chapter of the manga has yet to be conceived. So, and the anime is ahead of the manga. So the anime people have to make up a story of their own. They can't just adapt. It's kind of like the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones, when they ran out of source material and the writing staff had to come up with their own ideas. It's like that. That's kind of how this felt. It felt like and that's what a filler story is, though. So it's literally filler. It's just something that the anime people have to come up with in order to buy time as the manga people finish their job. Because it's like a 50-50 sort of thing. It's a weird symbiotic relationship over there. But that's basically how I felt about this, the previous episode 2. It felt like a time killer. It felt like an unnecessary deviation from what was already established in episode 1 and what is continued here in episode 3. To me, this is a return to form. This is kind of what I expected the show or the movie to be in my mind before I even knew anything about it. This is more like The Charmer with Nigel Havers from the 1980s. If you've ever heard of that, which we've mentioned in previous episodes thus far. But yeah, this kind of covers the subject matter that I would have expected to see from the series. Friends, his complicated love life. His weird this weird thing he has with women, where it's like he seems to kind of be like a chick magnet, but is also kind of like a sociopath. It's kind of like a freak. It also is his misadventures with various forms of like business and stuff, like all the weird kind of ventures he tries to have and the failures that ensue because of them. First it was obviously, as we've seen, first it was with Nazi newspapers. Now it's with selling shoelaces. Also, there was in the other episode, there were tie holders and stuff, So he's had all these failures and everything. And that's what I expected. Plus, I just in general, the sort of the social and I guess political, economic, whatever, foibles of the Germany and the Berlin of the 1920s, etc. For me, this third episode has been much more true to the spirit of the show that, like I said, that I invented in my head prior to actually watching it. And so for me, it's good to see it finally start to manifest itself 3 episodes in. And I think it's kind of funny because it's like, yeah, third time really is a charm by the way, things look based on what's happened so far. So, I don't know. Anyway, turn over to you, Simone. What would you rate the episode out of 10 and why? And what are your personal feelings towards it from what you've seen so far?
I'm thinking between 8.5 and 8, so maybe to save how this episode or how things will change or how will it progress in the next episode, I'll also give it an 8 because I saw those main parts that are improved in this one. I think that I'm expecting more on the next episode, that I will give it a solid 9 or maybe 10, just like this say with the first episode. Or I'm not sure what I rated the first episode, but yeah, I'm looking forward to more in depth of his character. That's why I'm expecting in the first episode that it would be focused, not exactly focused on his character, but those are the majority of the screen time are focused on how he developed or how are those episodes, because he has some series or episodes of mental problems or his own soliloquies and speaking to himself. That's why it gave us a snippets of who he really is or what his past really is, or prior to him beating his girlfriend, because right before it happened, it seems like that he already have some problems, and I'm looking forward to it, and that's why my first impression really is. It's just it'll focus on his character, and also I gave it quite a historical background of what really 1920s is, especially in where it was set in Germany. It touches in the last episode, just as I mentioned, there are a lot of pillars and give us some of those aspects, but I think it doesn't work that well, as I mentioned earlier, and I'm looking forward to some points that it might be brought back again, especially the Nazis or the social issues taking place during that time, because it's also what makes these story work, on how all other contexts are connected with each other to make it coherent, I guess. But in this episode, there are a lot to talk about, or there are what makes us disappointed from the last episode are all here. What we expected that should be included in that episode are, I saw it in here, and it satisfies some of my uh disappointed with the last episode, and so I give it an 8. And there are a lot to talk about it, so we'll get onto those things later.
Yeah. My thoughts exactly. So, we've already talked about the technical aspects for the series overall in general. I feel like it would be kind of redundant to always bring up the technical side of things every single time, because I don't feel like they've really changed too much. But there was one thing in particular that I wanted to highlight, and I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on it. And I don't want to, influence your opinion, so I'm just going to ask you the question first, and then I'll provide context for it after. But I don't know. What did you think of the background music in this episode, Simone? I mean, did you notice anything about it in particular as you were going along?
That's also one of the major things that I noticed, is because after I watch the episodes, I look up some playlists on Spotify or other platforms, or what are those music. I want to listen more to this. It helped me get into the show. Exactly, it's the charm of what's really is happening is makes me get into the moment, or understand what it really is. It's I don't know. I wanted to hear the music now watching the show, because I want to hear what I want to test what it will, or experiment with it. What would I feel not not affected by the visuals, but also the music only from the show. It really gets you in the moment, or a certain feeling that might pick the character, or the certain mood that it is special in a particular scene is set in. Uh, I'm still trying to look for that particular songs.
Right. Well, it's actually funny because I have the exact opposite opinion of you when it comes to this. Dude, I got to be honest. I thought the worst thing about this show so far, on the technical side of things, is the sappy music that sometimes plays in the background. Whenever something that's like lighthearted, or supposedly lighthearted or whimsical or whatever's happening, I think it's terrible. I think it like really sucks me out of it. Like I can't get into it sometimes, man. Like to me, it feels like it's completely out of place, and it just sort of materializes itself at random whenever it feels like it wants to show up, and it doesn't match with the tone and the mood that's established by moments that immediately precede when it comes in. And I think a perfect example of this would be during the scene at Lena's uncle, Otto Luder's house. It's when Franz and Lena they're talking about they're discussing the increasing rates of unemployment that are sweeping the nation. Right? They're talking about, I'm worried about not being able to get a job. This is before Otto kind of springs the shoelace idea on them. They're just talking amongst themselves, right? And it's weird because you go from that very serious sort of heavy discussion to all of a sudden just some transition. They transition to the two of them reading some weird poem about Jesus being the way or something. In a newspaper. There's a poem in a newspaper, a religious one. It's like motivation, spiritual motivation or whatever. And there's something about the fact that it had like nothing to do with what came before it, like at all. That kind of bugged me. I don't know. It was very jarring for some reason to me. Maybe I'm just extra sensitive to it or whatever. Maybe I'm just an asshole, but it's like, I don't know. For me, it's like the music is there to try and like kind of cheaply, like kind of seduce the audience into liking Franz more or something. Like it feels like cheap and kind of dirty almost. It's like kind of a cheap, cheap and like it's like cheating. It's like the people making the show or the movie or whatever are trying to like shortcut some way into getting the viewers to sympathize with Franz more, because I guess the further you get into the show, the movie or whatever, I guess the more you kind of need to like him, maybe, or something. I don't. It's weird, but it's like they want to get you to be on his side or whatever without actually writing it so that he is on your side, without actually doing the work. Because it's like, and it's a complicated thing, because it's like they've already established in the previous 2 episodes that he's really fucking weird and like, a terrible person or whatever. He's fucked up. He's like an overgrown man-child. He's like someone who's, he's like someone who's had his mental illness like unchecked his entire life. Like he doesn't even know that he's fucking insane. And the society around him doesn't seem to understand that he is, not well in the head or whatever. They don't really get the psychosis. And yet we're still supposed to like kind of like him. And I do like him in certain respects, but like it doesn't help when they shove this sappy, like I think they call it like mood music or cue music. And it's one of the reasons why I kind of just hate television in general. I know that this is kind of like a movie and a show, but I guess I could just say that I hate like music, bad music, I guess. Like I like really good music, like with Star Wars, John Williams. Like that's what makes Star Wars so memorable, is the music, right? I feel like the sound in media can really make or break it, Star Wars was made by its fantastic soundtrack. Whereas, I can't think of a bad example off the top of my head, but something with a really shitty soundtrack, or just sound in general, it leaves a bad taste in the mouth, because I feel like as viewers, we sort of semi-consciously like cling to the sound before anything else. Like that's the one sense that sort of captures our attention the most, or whatever, grips us the most, is sound. And so I used to, think it was stupid. I used to get annoyed by people who would make such a big deal about, make like a huge deal about, oh, this is a fantastic soundtrack. Like, this is great sound. Like, the sound really made this movie. It sounded super fucking stupid to me. I don't know. It just sounded like geek. I don't like, music theory types or whatever, just in general, for whatever reason. It was just some weird bias I had when I was younger. But it's like, the more I like, expose myself to in terms of like movies and TV shows and just media in general, it's like, I can appreciate it now. Like, I understand where they're coming from, There is something to that, I think. I think there's something to sound and how it affects film and entertainment in general, And so, yeah, and I've been noticing it a lot more lately. And yeah, for me, it feels like they stick in these weird sort of like stings or whatever, or like, like, it's supposed to be like heartwarming, it's supposed to cockle you a little bit, it's supposed to get you in the mood to be happy or sad. It feels very manipulative, almost a little coercive and just cheap. It's like, again, do that through the writing, do that through the characterization, do that through setting the scene, do it through telling the story. You don't have to put this like huge flourish on it. It's kind of like having, I don't know, it's like having, it's like, I feel like probably how most adults look at like candy and shit, just for a weird example, right? For dessert, it's like most adults don't like super sweet things, Most adults are happy with just like a scoop of plain vanilla ice cream, To me, whenever you add like overly dramatic or melodramatic or sappy music or whatever, swelling music, highly emotional music, whatever, that just doesn't really fit, it's like, I guess it's sort of like the equivalent of taking that one scoop of vanilla ice cream and like just dumping an entire thing of like chocolate fudge onto it, like the whole fucking bottle for just one scoop. It's like, the scoop is okay, it's fine on its own. If you're gonna do anything, just add a drizzle. But no, it's like when you do this fucking over dramatic music, it's like you're just dumping the entire bottle, and it's like you're taking the cap off and just saying, fuck it, I'm basically gonna have ice cream fudge soup instead of just putting a drizzle on, because that's all you need. The ice cream is good enough as it is. If you're gonna give it a flourish, keep it like that. Keep it as a flourish. Don't make it the centerpiece. And I kind of feel like when music is too like sort of demanding, I guess, like the music was in the scene with Lena and Franz at Otto's house, it kind of makes that the main course, and it's not supposed to be the main course, if that makes sense. I don't know. What do you think of all of that? Well, I should, before I say that, by the way, I should mention that it's weird to have this it's almost like family flick music, right? It's like kind of the thing you would see in like a Disney Channel movie or something. And it's weird because this is a film that's like really heavy and like historically and socially and politically wrought. You know, like it's got all these deep themes and like, well, not even deep. Well, yeah, deep, but like, you know, kind of controversial, like uncomfortable subject matter that it goes through. And so it's just weird that it has like Disney Channel music, and I think it's like a harmonica or something. But that's what I noticed. It's the harmonica sting or whatever. The rest of the music is fine. I don't really think of it. It's not good or bad for me. I'm completely neutral about it. I think it's average, just middle of the road, whatever. It gets the job done, but it didn't strike out. It didn't stand out to me the way it did for you. And I want to hear your perspective. I want to hear your side of things. But yeah, for me, it's just that harmonica, man. It really it has no place in the places that it's in. It's weird. I don't know why they're so obsessed with it. It was in episode 1 too. Like they keep doing it. I don't get it. It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad sound on its own. It just doesn't. It's not appropriate, you know. And it's like an unwanted guest. Like it's perfectly fine on its own, you know. But it doesn't really fit within the context of what's going on the screen. And then of course, like literally 3 seconds after it like completely derails the mood of the moment, it disappears. It fades as soon as Otto comes back into the room and starts talking to them about his shoelace business. It goes away like it was never there to begin with. And for me, it's like that's the thing about the series so far. This movie so far, it's like it's got a lot of weird inconsistencies. You know, like the whole episode 2 was completely inconsistent. It had like no reason to be there. There's a lot of fluff. There's a lot of weird static filler so far. That's like my main gripe with the film so far. It's perfectly fine other than that. It's very effective, but it has this weird technical flaw of having a bunch of useless shit thrown in every so often, you know. And yeah, it's very jarring tonally. But I want to hear your perspective because I think we disagree on this. So I want to know what you think of all of that before we move on to the next discussion question.
I think we really disagree with things. Like I said, I like the harmonica part, to be honest, and I wanted to. That's the particular sounds that I wanted to research on to hear when not looking at the show or seeing the visuals for the shows while watching it. Because it takes a different. It affects me differently, or I hear the sounds. Maybe let's just say it's quite distant to the show. There's a different. Maybe I'm not taking it the way that it should be on the show. Maybe I take it more personally, I guess, because I heard a particular sound when I was a kid. So maybe that's it. But I think there are some points that the music works. It's not just all the musics are all crappy. There are some parts that it works, and just as you mentioned, the special parts where when they met Lena's uncle, it doesn't work in that part. But there are some parts that for me that just like how the second episode doesn't work, or how we didn't like it, and how things turns out in the third episode, and there are some parts that it doesn't work, but at some parts it work, and I kind of like it the way we recognize the two episodes or how we compare it. But I didn't consume much of medias when I was a kid, or even though the particular noise that you're talking about, the background songs are present in the televisions, but due to the context as Filipino dubbing in this movie or television, it's not as noticeable as it should be. And I only realized this while doing this during our recordings or for this channel. All the shows that we watch on our own, it gives you a different perspective on it. But so maybe it's just I'm taking it into the basis, or there are a lot of first times in the shows in the Inferior Child podcast that I experienced, and I think this is one of them, and I kind of like it, even though that you didn't.
Oh yeah, sure. So but that makes sense, right? Because you have a personal attachment to it. You know, there's an element of like sentimental value to those particular sounds, whereas I don't really have that, and I just don't like. I don't know. Maybe I hate harmonicas. Like I don't know. But you know, what I want to know is like just as a viewer, like, what does it do for you? What effect does it have on you? Like, how does it contribute to like the flow and the mood and the atmosphere of the film so far? Like, from that artistic perspective or whatever, that standpoint, like, how does it affect you? What is your relationship with it? Because I am curious about this, because we have gone down two completely different paths. And, just before you answer, like, I gotta mention that that's probably like the first time that's ever happened, honestly. Like, this is a historical moment for, in Imperial Tides podcast history. Imperial Tides history is that, we finally found something that we have, like, at least a slight disagreement on. So, yeah, I'd like to hear your side of things just a little more before we move on with the rest of the, regular talky talk. But, go for it.
Really, during these times, I approach things differently for the shows or for these recordings that we do. And this is one of these. I'm trying to refine the way that I review this, that I won't do or take things the way as you do. I want to do it the other way, but then I don't want to do it with just to disagree. But I personally feel this particular music that we disagree on, and it's constitutes or cases. There are a lot of experiences that I'm trying to connect with it, not only in this particular moment that I'm watching it. I'm trying to look at different aspects, not only on the objective aspects, but the way that we can enjoy the shows on our own. And I think I find a way to do it on this particular episode. And maybe you can notice it in the last episodes that there's a particular element that I'm looking for, and this meets the expectations or that particular criteria for that element to make it quite personal or connect to the way that I was thinking with all those stuff that are contexts that are taking place. But and also I the way that I approach the first episode, the second episode, the third, all these episodes that we've seen so far, I'm I'm always maybe I got tricked, or maybe the way that the director wanted the show's appeals really worked on me to look at River Cup in a way that he's somehow charismatic, even though he's not our hero. He's not. It was refined in the first episode that he's not really a hero. Revealed in what are the things that he had done, but the way that it's going, I kind of see him as he is, but I need to take some precautions to get into more the other aspects of it.
Yeah. Well, and for me, it's like, I don't know. Maybe for me, it's a little too early on to determine whether or not he really is like good at all or whatever. But it's like, yeah, I just I don't like how it feels like they're trying to fast track that sympathy when it's like that has to be earned. It can't be cheap. You have to put the work in as script writers, as just creatives in general. That's how art works. So it just, compared to and maybe it's because the rest of it's so, well done that the only bad part stands out by comparison. Maybe it's a testament to how good it is so far, really, that there is like this one sort of weird sore outlier. But I don't know. It's been weird. It's been a weird experience so far. So I mean, episode 4 could be completely different. I have no idea. It's probably too early to comment on anything, but that's just how I feel at present. So we'll see. That's what I'll say for now. But yeah. So of course the highlight of this episode is probably well, maybe it's not the highlight, but it's definitely one of the most important things that happens, obviously, right? Because I mean, to be fair, not a lot happens. Like, only like 3 or 4 things, really. And one of those like 3 or 4 things was, of course, Franz's encounter with the widow. He's got to go. He's going out selling shoelaces for the first time. The first door he knocks on is that of a young widow who sees her dead husband in Franz and decides to sleep with him and pays him like 10 German bucks or whatever for for a night. And he leaves his supplies there because it's, they sort of have this unspoken agreement that he'll come back and do this on a regular basis, and that this is like a weird sort of agreement for him. He's kind of like a gigolo. He's a male prostitute for her kind of thing, he spends time with her and she rewards him with money, whatever, pays him back, right? Because she's lonely because her husband just died, right? And it's a different time, and it's like, when you're a widow back then, you're kind of fucked, like it's kind of a big deal. So they're very vulnerable, and that's why it's fucked up when Otto obviously takes advantage of that, because she's very, it's not like today. It's kind of hard to come back from, and so anyway, yeah. What I want to know, Simone, is just in general, like, what did you think of Franz's encounter with the widow? What did you think of that whole dynamic or whatever?
I think it's ironic the way that he approached it. The way that he approached Oro, that he wanted something that is morally acceptable, a job that is a decent job in particular. That their make is offering some jobs which are not he doesn't like, which he thought is obviously not a decent job, which is he's doing illegal stuffs and whatnot, and he doesn't like it. He wants a new direction for his career, or the way that he's going to move into. As he described it as a straight line that he wanted to walk through, but and then Lena talked to her about this, and he she got reminded by his uncle, a friend, his father's friend, which is Otto, and then they thought that everything will go well, that it was a decent job, being selling shoelaces, and then the way that he described the job, that it is the thing that he really wanted. It is the way that his heart desired at some point, that it's a decent. He's talking about it, that I want something, a decent job, and it's ironic that there are some inside job, not exactly inside job, but things that are not really connected to what he wanted, or it just, I know that everything will go directly to what he's saying, the way that he really negate everything that is bad or uh, ironic or contradict his new perspective in life.
Right, and that seems to be one of the things that makes him sympathetic, right? Is that, he does clearly want to try to be good, but through circumstance and just general misfortune, it seems like problems follow him no matter where he goes, right? So, like in the last episode, he tried to get some regular jobs selling ties and tie holders and stuff, but it didn't work because there wasn't any demand for that. It was a dead end job. So then he had to become, so then he was sort of like coerced into becoming a, sort of like a Nazi newspaper salesman and kind of, general supporter. And then that brings him, bad luck too. That gets him into trouble. And then he had, so now he's quit that. And now he's trying to do something else. And he, all these things, he's just trying to make ends meet. He's just trying to provide for himself and the people around him, right? And just be a normal human being, right? Just be a productive member of society. But what we've seen so far is that the society is flawed. It's sort of corrupt almost. The system is, maybe it's not corrupt, but it's broken. It just doesn't work. And it's a really fucked up world that these people are living in, right? It's where you can literally, criminals can live much better lives than regular folk. If you try to do things the right way, you will probably get yourself killed. You'll probably starve to death. But if you cheat, lie, and abuse everyone around you, you'll get more, right? And that's just how fucked up things are. The rules are completely out of order. There's no order here. It's chaos. The 1920s Berlin is chaos right now, and it's falling apart. And it's the perfect stage for something terrible like Nazism to come in and kind of just take everything over, because it's already been beaten to a pulp. The society, the culture, everything's falling apart. It's already falling apart. It's over. It is, and that's the feeling that you get when you watch this. At least I do. That's the impression that I think they're trying to convey. And that's something weird with Otto. It's like he just has, Franz, he just has piss poor luck. But it's also interesting because, like, I mean, there's also the side. It's a very complicated thing, right? Because there's another side of it to that besides that, right? And that's my next question. Simone. I mean, I don't know. Was it a good idea for him to sleep with her? I mean, wasn't it kind of like a dick move to make? Especially considering how stable and good his relationship with Lena has been. Like, I don't know. Was it even good for him to sleep with the widow, or I don't know, how do you feel about that side of things, that aspect?
If we're looking at it, of course, it's not good in the moral aspects. It is always what the people are always the basis for some people, but on how things it was set out, or how the just as you mentioned, there is the director is trying to wanted us to be sympathetic towards him, and that's how somehow it affected me, or how it kind of worked. That even though it's not really the good thing, or it's not really the exact good thing that should happen or take place because of his new perspective, or how will things will might turn out because of his weird behavior that he's on right now. But in the good thing, it affected him in the good aspect, that even though there are some contradictions that might take place, for example, during one episode or one scene, and he's talking to Lena and he's asking if they wanted to or have sex right in front of them early in the morning. If Lena declined that that question, or for him his desire to do it, but in that particular sense, if this particular if the widow doesn't appear, or he doesn't even brought out to the show, that in that particular scene, the flow of the story might uh turn left, or will drastically change. It will again go a completely different path, just like what happened in the second episode.
Well, so
So it kind of balances the mood, or not always in the verge of destruction or chaos as said in the first episode.
right, and that's an interesting point you brought up, right? Because, like, it's implied or whatever that he probably wouldn't have had sex with the widow if if Lena was more, I guess, satisfying in terms of their sexual activity. And so that's a weird dynamic going on there, right? Like, I don't know, Simone, like, how do you feel about Franz's lust for sex in general, right? Because, I mean, he was clearly willing to risk compromising his relationship with Lena in order to get laid, right? In order for just a quick bang, So, like, I don't know, what does that say about his character? I mean, is he controlled by his sexual impulses, or was he just being dumb in the moment? Was it an opportunistic kind of thing? Because like that's kind of what they say about a lot of criminals in general, right? It's like most of them don't plan. It's not premeditated. It's not planned beforehand. A lot of the times, people who commit crimes are just people who, you're walking down the street and you see someone's, purse, and there's like a woman and she's like got her back turned, and there's her purse is open and her wallet's like right there, and so you just grab the wallet and run. That's a lot of criminals. It's not all of them or whatever, but it's at least a reasonable, it's some percentage of them, right? And it's a matter of opportunism, opportunists, right? And so is it something like that, or is it perhaps simply just does it have to do with the customs of the times for men, to be loose and uncaring when it comes to their sexual activity? Is monogamy, is infidelity really a thing that the society cares about? Because it seems like it's very conservative society generally speaking, but I don't know, do the men really care? Like, I don't know, all of these factors, like what sort of, like, I don't know, what sort of answer do you get out of all of those? I guess I want to know your thoughts regarding particularly just Franz's lust and for sex in general. So I don't know, what do you think?
I want to connect it with particular with my insights in the first episode, especially the scene where he raped his ex-girlfriend's sister. In that particular scene, that it turns out that it seems that that's what he really wanted, or that's what brings him back into the reality. So everything he's really messed up, or he's not stable. He's not stable in any aspects um of him as a human being, or as he is after he got out of the prison, or after serving his sentence, 4 years in jail. That's what really put him back into his character of who is Franz Beavercroft before he was sentenced to jail. And the way that I noticed this is just uh it's act like a drug from him, that he's it's a, the way that it was portrayed. It doesn't seem like that he's really addicted to it, but if we're looking into a different perspective, or how it affected him, it's actually acts as the drug. It brought him back to reality. This is what he unnoticedly desired to be sane.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like it dominates him. It seems like it sort of controls. Like it like sort of possesses him almost. It kind of takes over his whole being, and he kind of forgets himself. He gets lost in the moment, and it just it takes the wheel. He kind of goes on autopilot, and it kind of just does everything for him almost. That's kind of how I feel about it. Is that it's a very in the moment thing, and it completely possesses him. His mind is emptied of everything else but the idea of having sex with a woman. And that's how I see it. Um, yeah, I mean, and there's something to contrast his relationship with sex to, I guess, and that would be, Simone. What did you think of Otto himself? Otto's failed attempts to sleep with the widow as well, because Otto comes in after Franz has sex with her, like the next day with the widow, and he tries to do the same thing because Franz sort of brags about it to him, and so he tries to take advantage of her, get the same sort of treatment, but she clearly doesn't like him, and so it's like, how do you feel about that? Is that different from the way Franz approached it? Like, is it I don't know. What do you think, just in general? Like, what did you think of Otto's attempt at banging the widow?
Uh, First, to compare and contrast their character, they are obviously different persons. The Otto is two-faced individual. He has two-face, and the way that he acts it, he has two different characters, that he acts as a good person, but the reality is he isn't. And especially in front of Vivercup, he's really a good friend. The way that to talk about him, he's really fond of him, but he doesn't. He's not really is. It's not the real him behind it. It's just this is the exact same event. It just they only. It seems that it's been only a week or days that they met, and he already know his character, because he already revealed or shed his true colors in the scene. And let's go back to how it happened with Beavercup and the widow. It's happened spontaneously, or he doesn't really plan on doing it at all. It's just the widow just opened herself. Uh the main reason for her to like him is first that she recognizes her husband in Beavercup, but obviously she didn't like it with uh with Otto. And to look at it, the particular approach that the Beavercup used in their first meeting, there's not really it. He doesn't really desire it, or eventually there's not planned. It just happened unnoticedly or on its own. But Otto is really there's much more evil to maybe how they introduce Otto in this episode to give us more sympathy towards Beavercroft.
Sure. And another thing I wanted to ask too is, how did your initial impression of Otto, of who he was, how did that compare to who he turned out to be? Because at first they try to establish him as like this nice guy, he's going to help him out. He's a good family friend and all that. He's a good family member, whatever. It's like, how did you feel about the reveal, I guess, when it turned out that he was actually a lying, piece of garbage?
I didn't. I already have some predictions that this man won't be a good company. Knowing how things works in this particular shows, that it's always. Maybe to compare it with the particular shows that we have seen so far, that it was a common plot twist, but to consider it when it was produced, that there are some clues that are openly or in frontly, the way that he was introduced, that it was directly obvious that things will be up with his character. And also, it's been 12 years since Lina last get in touch with his other friends, so there are a lot of things that take place during that time, and there are a lot of changes.
Yeah. I didn't see it coming, to be honest, man. I don't know. I was just trying to, like, I didn't know where anything was going to go. So it was weird. It was like, yeah, shit. I don't know. It kind of looks like Henry Miller to me a little bit. So maybe I don't know. It's a little weird. But yeah, so, and of course, I mean, according to Dante, he committed the greatest sin of all, which is treachery. That's, you get sent to the lowest, coldest ring of hell for that. But, yeah, so then there's also the matter of Franz's meeting with Ava again. So what I want to ask you is, Simone, what did you think of Franz's sort of unlikely encounter with Ava? Again, third time in a row that this has happened, right? He accidentally kind of runs into her while he's trying to sell shoelaces. And like I said, from their conversation, it's implied that she's a sex worker or a prostitute, and that she's staying at one of her Johns's, one of her clients' apartments. And I don't know, did you think that moment was believable? And what do you think is going to come of it in the future episodes?
I still don't know who's Ava is. I still don't want to buy these clues that are presented right in front of my eyes, because I'm trying to connect them. Her first appearance on the first episode, the second episode, and this episode. It's just, I can't directly connect them with each other. In each particular scenes that she shows up, or those a little bit of snippets of who she really is, I have different predictions of who she might be, and I'm looking for a particular episode. I'm sure that there would be an episode where it was focused mainly on Eva, that they would do it the way that they do it with River. He is the first character, and also with, there are a lot of things that might be revealed as it runs.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll wait until more happens, I guess, to comment on it. But my prediction, I guess, is that he'll probably end up getting back together with her. Maybe she'll be the last person from his old life that he turns to. Maybe maybe he's already too far away from Lena and Mech at this point. But maybe Ava will be the one who tries to, maybe she'll be like an angel, coming out of the darkness in his eyes or whatever, and maybe that'll fall apart too. But we'll see. And so, I guess, yeah. Also, Tamara, what did you think of the widow's reaction to Franz returning? He buys some flowers for her. He tries to be all nice and stuff. And well, and it's funny too, because when he's at the florist trying to get the flowers, he asks for something very specific, and she ends up suggesting flowers of death, white petunias or whatever. And that's some good symbolism there. So I guess before I ask you this next question, what do you think of the symbolism of the white petunias and stuff? What does that say about Franz? Is he haunted by his past? the way that someone like Don Draper from Mad Men is, or BoJack Horseman from BoJack Horseman is. Does he have his demons kind of on his back at all times? Because that's the impression I got from that little bit of symbolism that they had there. The white petunias of death.
Oh, exactly. The flower that she suggested is white carnations, but
Yeah.
I also connect it with some trivias or facts that I discovered recently, that there's a white desert rose or white calchuchi flowers are symbol of death here in the Philippines, or it was uh, they usually give it to the family of the deceased. It's
Right.
just I still don't get it why they do it here, or it might not be only the tradition. It might also be traditions in different countries. I thought that flower is kind of happy, or it portrays a different character. The same with the flower that the florist suggested, that it was carnations. I thought it was a lovely flower, or a symbol of life or happiness and whatnot. But I'm also surprised. I'm trying to understand how this particular uh world of symbolisms works. Maybe
Yeah.
there's a particular historical background in each of this.
Well, so I looked it up while you were talking, and it says here that white carnations are, I guess, according to this, I don't know if it's true or not, but it says any white blossom is only appropriate for funerals in Asian cultures because the color is associated with death, and that it's unlucky to give someone white flowers for other occasions. So yeah, and it says here that traditionally mourning flowers are offered at funerals and burials. White carnations signify deep sorrow, combining a powerful symbol of death, sadness, and respect. And so you said, because you're Asian, right? You're Filipino. So is it true that like white flowers, it's common to see at funerals and stuff like that? Is the symbolism is accurate from your experiences?
Uh, I think it's accurate, but there are also uh the florists do it in a different way. They add some pink roses, or not roses. I don't know how it was called or what's the name of the flower, but it was heart shaped, and there's a crystal connected with its stem.
Yeah,
I don't know what it's called, but they put it side to side with white carnations or white daisies or Malaysian flowers
yeah,
here. And with the flower that I mentioned earlier, it's called Kalachuchi, and I haven't seen any funerals here that they put those particular flowers, and that's why I been kind of skeptical or trying to get how they connected it, because they use this in different occasions. But I don't think that all white flowers here I use only solely for the purpose of funerals, because they use our national flower. The national flower of the Philippines is called Sampaguita, and it's related to purity, and they use it for some religious occasions. They put it on the sacred images in their houses,
yeah,
and also example, a returning hero from, not exactly a hero, uh, a sport or artist representative in other country. They put it in like this. I forgot what it's called.
yeah. No, but that I guess the thing to try to figure out here is like why white of all colors. You know what I mean? It's like why. Well, I guess white's a shade, but it's like why isn't it blue? For sadness, cry, 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 because tears are they're not blue, but I guess people like to think that they are, or whatever. It's like why isn't it some other random color? Like why isn't it shit brown? Because it's shit when someone dies. You know what I mean? I don't know, but it's like white. I feel like there's something there. There's a connection between purity and death, right? Maybe it has to do with sort of returning to God, almost for you guys, maybe, or returning to some sort of spiritual wholeness, maybe, and maybe kind of like how we tend to think of maybe like a dead body is like a corpse is like it's a blank slate. There's no life left in it, and so it's been drained of all its color. And so, of course, the only thing left for it would be white, maybe. So maybe there's some symbolism to do, some clever little things that you can come up with there. But it's interesting. It was a nice little touch. It's like how you said in the last couple episodes, the sort of the literary techniques that they throw into the movie. I feel like this was one of those good ones. It's just a nice, tiny little detail, but it makes a lot of difference. It gives it it accentuates a lot, and it gives it that texture, that flavor that helps it to stand apart from a lot of other things, I guess. That moment kind of stuck out to me above, among a lot of the other, a lot of the static, I guess, the fluff in between. So there's that. And I guess, to go back to the original question, Simone, what did you think of the widow's reaction to Fran's returning? She, was it justified, or is the misunderstanding unreasonable? Because he shows up with regular flowers and tries to, not white ones, but regular flowers, and tries to, go on the second date or whatever, the second sexy fun time or whatever. And she slams the door in his face and doesn't open. And so, I don't know. What do you think of that reaction? Justified, unjustified? Do you wish it worked out differently? I don't know. How do you feel?
My initial impression that she doesn't even notice the flower at all. She just saw Franz and he freaked out, or because she was trauma, or how with the death of his husband, and after that he met Franz, and then she's a little bit back into normal, or he's able to give what his husband left, or what she's longing for, and then after that she was again traumatized with what Otto did to her, and then again Frank came back with all those impressions left in her, and then he show up, and then she saw her, and then that's it. It's just especially the flowers in this particular scenes are how the widow recognized the flower at all. It might not be recognized at all, but we can connect it just like in the last scene prior to this one, that it might be a symbolism in this episode, but not exactly on what happened between them. Or you can also connect it, but it's not. I don't think that the flower is in the actual recognition that the widow did or has. It's not really connected to it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. She doesn't pay any attention to what color flowers they are. She doesn't give a shit, And but yeah. I don't know. I feel like it might have been another one of those moments where it's like, well, if only, things had turned out right. Maybe Franz would be saved. Maybe he would be redeemed. Maybe he could have a happy, fuck buddy on the side along with Lena, which is weird. But I feel like it's just kind of, the whole thing's just stupid. It's like, fuck it. You already have one girlfriend. Just because she doesn't want to have sex with you all the time doesn't mean that you need to, sleep around or whatever. So it's kind of, it's his fault. It's the world's fault. It's definitely Otto's fault, and it's also the widow's fault too, because I feel like it definitely would have to be taboo. It definitely would have to go against the social norm, the conventional grain or whatever, to just have random affairs with people, especially if you're a widow. I think especially back then, widows got really bad reputation for that, because I think a lot of them used casual sex as a coping mechanism for their grief, and the fact that they were kind of fucked, and a lot of them probably turned to I don't want to say prostitution, but a form of sort of a more socially acceptable kind of form of that, where they might, use men for, financial benefit and all that, just to survive, just to sustain themselves. So that's kind of the impression I get from that whole thing. It was a disaster no matter what. I feel like it's probably for the best that it's over, But at the same time, maybe, I don't know, maybe Franz is that weird that that could have been the one thing that, keeps him straight or whatever. It's just having two women at once, just going back and forth between them, maybe. I don't know. Maybe he's too much man for just one woman. I don't know. I don't know if he's some sort of weird sexual dynamo or whatever. But yeah. So then after that, of course, we have the whole thing. This is one of the last things, really. Mech kind of, he goes out of his way to figure out what happened. So it's kind of confusing in the script, but like basically, yeah, Otto Franz ends up running away. This happens kind of off camera, but Franz and Otto get into an argument, I guess, about like the whole thing with the widow. He basically figures out that he's a traitor, but Otto never really gives it away. He never says it upright. He never says it, up front or just explicitly. But Franz pretty much figures that out and leaves, runs away, and Lena seeks out Mech, who's like Franz's old friend and everything. They look for him, and he basically interrogates Otto, threatens to stab him and stuff, and they find out where he is. But so what I want to know through all of that, Simone, is do you feel like Mech is a true friend to Franz? Do you feel like he's actually a good guy, despite his criminal activity and shady past? Like, does he actually care about Franz, or is he just looking for something? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it's also how let's base things on how it ends. That it's just in the first, I with how it ends now that it turns out that he also likes Lena, and there might be also the case in the first scene where Lena and Franz met, that he also has the desire to ask her to go out and be his boyfriend or be in a relationship. Not only in that, but that's also it. That I see the connection. I After how it turns out that I thought that he's really concerned how he threatens Otto that, hey, uh you should search for to France and confess everything that you know, why these things happened or why he decided to do it, to just run away. And that's that he's really the good friend, that he's the only good, uh, the justified good person towards France, our main character. But it turns out that he has his also personal desires and his own personal reasons to do it, and that's really justified in the end, that he also liked Lena, and that's what he really wanted. There might be some choice, or we can say that it might be obviously that he do all those things, all this effort to look good in front of Lena, to be also a favorable character, to be sympathetic towards him.
Well, I mean, I see it, kind of in the reverse, in the opposite direction, right? Because it's like, to me, it actually kind of proves that he's a good friend, because he goes through all of this effort to try to find friends, despite the fact, in spite of the fact that he actually likes the woman that he's with, in spite of the fact that he likes Lena. Because, I mean, he could have easily just gone like, well, fuck it, he's gone, Franz is over, let's just get together instead. He could have just done that straight up, but he put everything on the line. He put a lot at risk just to help him out, just to try to find his buddy. So I think they have a bond. I think they've established that in the other episodes too, that they're very close. And it's a friendship that can't really be ruined, at least not yet. Maybe it'll be in the future if these characters feature in the rest of the film, right? But it's like, it seems like a very tight, water-blocked, waterproof, whatever, sort of a friendship that they've got. And it's interesting because, I mean, Franz, they explain it. He's a criminal, right? He offers, Mech is a criminal. He offers Franz a criminal job, and when they're in the apartment, and he turns it down, but he does it to be nice, And then there's also this thing about, because just Mech in general, his character in general, right? He seems like he's the most mature out of all of them. And this is something I wanted to mention earlier, but it's weird. The characters in this, they have a weird sort of dynamic where they act like children a lot of the time. They have very emotional responses to things. And that was especially the case like when Franz like wakes Mech up, because Mech's sleeping in the apartment waiting to tell him about this crime job that he has that Franz ultimately turns down. But before he does, he wakes him up by pretending to be a police officer or whatever. And it scares Mech, and Mech's the only, and everyone around them laughs. Like the landlady laughs, Lena laughs, Franz laughs. They all think it's hilarious, but Mech is the only one that takes it seriously. and it's like he's the only real adult in the room at that point. You know, that's kind of how that's the impression I got, and it's weird because, and that's sort of, it seems to be the way that it's this weird like sort of bipolar characterization that a lot of people had from that period. It seems to be this weird sort of byproduct of Victorian upbringing. You know, growing up in the Victorian era. You know, at the end of the 19th century, right? Yeah, the 19th century, the 1800s. Because it's something that Henry Miller, you know, the writer Henry Miller, American writer, wrote about in one of his novels, Tropic of Capricorn. He mentions how his dad, his parents, his family, and all their friends and stuff, like they, you know, one minute they'll be like, you know, making fart jokes or stuff, you know, whatever, like laughing at each other's farts, something stupid like that, something very childish, you know, kind of, I wouldn't say innocent, but naive, you know, something very immature like that. They'll do that one minute, and then the next minute they'll beat the shit out of their own kids or something. You know, it's very weird. It's this cross between like hijinks and violence, you know, and you see that a lot in a lot of these older stories or whatever. It's like people are just, they're very animalistic almost. It's weird. They're not quite as civilized as they could be because, you know, there's this sort of lack of education and I guess just comfort in general. You know, it's like maybe people's lives are so hard that they need to resort to cheap things like that, you know. And so when a child is misbehaving, rather than like take, you know, the effort that it would take to like, you know, explain why their behavior is wrong or whatever, it's just easier to just smack them across the head and get it over with, you know, and then they shut up, and then that's a more guaranteed like whatever, but it messes them up, you know, but they don't have that psychological awareness or whatever, you know. There's a lot going on, but I kind of feel like that's a weird dynamic, and I want to know what your opinion on it is, Simone. That weird sort of like cross between childishness and violence, I guess, that you see in a lot of these older works from that era, I guess.
I can also connect it with Meg's character, or how I recognize him at first. And I think it's also childish. We try to not validate everything that it's constituted. We only focus on a particular perspective and not to look at different other, well, to consider other to just to justify our own opinions. I guess that we only look at this one perspective to make it argumentable, I guess, and which is also connected with it. And also, I guess it's also connected with some cultural stuff that I can connect it. There's a superiority when it comes to adult and child. That an adult can badmouth children, or they can talk shit about children, but kids can do it. I guess it's also connected with it, but it wasn't that much my concern growing up. But it says there are a lot of ironic aspects in not only in those old forms of literatures and medias or cultures. It is also, we can deny that it's also present in the present era that we live in, but it is in a different forms. In different forms, it
Yeah.
also dynamically changes.
Yeah. These days it's all gone digital, man. All that shit's on Twitter now. Fucking, you know,
Yeah.
oh God, it's such a fuck fest. Jesus, it's such a trash fire. Yeah, I mean, I see it all the time in American culture, American society. People act like fucking kids, you know, all the time. But I'm curious because I don't want to sound like a dick when I say this. I know it's going to sound really bad, I guess, on my part, but it's like, from what you've told me about your life, because you live out in like the rural part of you know, the Philippines. You're in a province, right? You're not in like the city or whatever. So there's a very specific sort of lifestyle that the people have there. And what I want to know is like, do you see a connection between the sort of behavior that Franz has in the show with, you know, the whole thing with the practical jokes and the violence, whatever? Like, do you see that sort of thing like in your life there? Because from everything that you've told me, you know, it's like, it just doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense the way that people choose to live there, right? It doesn't really, it clashes a lot with like the modern era, I suppose, you know, with the way things that have developed. It's I don't want to say it's uncivilized, but there's this conflict between tradition and modernity, you know, and modernity. Sorry, not modernity, modernity. And it's because it's like, well, for example, let me just list some examples so that the audience can kind of know what I'm trying to say, right? Like, you know, for instance, it's like you guys have roosters there all the time that like just constantly making noise, and it's like that should make it it would, I guess, in a modern sense, a modern solution to that would be to either like buy collars for them so they can't crow as much, so they don't make as much noise, because noise pollution is it makes it difficult to sleep at night. It makes it difficult to do your homework or whatever, to concentrate on tasks and stuff, to have a feeling of like solitude and aloneness, because everyone needs to be alone. That's just a human thing, right? But over there, it doesn't seem like people really care. They don't remove voice boxes from roosters, or they don't do anything about it. Same with like dogs, for example. It's like you guys had dogs. You mentioned how 6 of your dogs just sort of died out of nowhere. It's like, well, I guess in a no, if I don't want to sound like a dick when I say this, but it's like in a more like in a developed like Western country or whatever, it would be more commonplace to give them shots and to make sure that they kind of like neuter them, cut off their genitalia so that they can't reproduce. And it seems like over there, there's just not as much of a concern for that. It's like if 6 dogs die, it's just another day that ends in Y. It's just Monday or whatever. And so, and just in terms of like just general like conduct and stuff, just the way people respect boundaries, it doesn't seem like the people in your part of the world care as much about that. It seems like the community, it works differently. It's not better or worse necessarily. It's just different. And so I want to hear some of your thoughts regarding that, if you have any. What do you think? I guess. What do you think?
Before actually, I say there's a notification that my computer is running out. I thought that I charged it well earlier. I need to grab my charger if it's okay.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, we're like an hour and a half in so far. And from now on, my policy when it comes to making these videos is going to be to just to give you guys a little bit of I don't know, filler. I got to say something, right? So we're at an hour and 21 minutes according to my stopwatch, and I have to record this all in a stopwatch so that I can get it all proper, right? But it's my computer sucks. I have a student laptop. It's not made for this kind of thing, apparently. Apparently my MacBook Pro can't handle like having 2 hours of video footage saved onto it. I just don't have enough storage for whatever reason. And it's Apple's they scam you so hard, man. Like you have to buy extra storage. It's such bullshit. It's like the max is like 200 or something, 250. I'm out of space basically. Like 250 GB flash disk storage. I've already taken up like 150 of that or something. So I only have like 100 left. And so I have to like limit these to like an hour and a half or something. So I'll stop recording after every like hour and a half or so. Because we recorded a 2-hour conversation and I had to split that up. And like my computer was like on the verge of total collapse. It was fucking stupid. But yeah. So Simone, now that you're back, I don't know. What do you think of all of that I just mentioned? This sort of dynamic between, I guess sort of just disregard for whatever. Just I don't want to say childishness, but sort of naivete and whatever. I don't know. Just this clash between modernity and traditionalism, or whatever you want to call it. Because you see a lot of it in Berlin Alexanderplatz. So I wanted to know if you can apply that to your own life and your own experiences.
I wanted to connect it with my experiences after then. My tricycle rides, they're always playing some crappy music that are not even relevant. You're not even listening to it, and it's annoying that it is. I only notice these things when I try to look at different perspectives. Could you introduce me with these kinds of perspectives of yours, or how things works in a different place, or a different place not the same with the Philippines, or what we have here? It's just when you say that we tend to that's what actually it is that is connected to this idea of how adult acts in this childish way. It's constituted to romanticization. We tend to romanticize these kinds of problems because we can endure it. That's what it really is. It's just, for example, there are some problems in the roads in this crappy political system. They just it can still work. We can enjoy it, and we just wait for until it collapses, or needs to be paid. And people are, it means that they're kind of been used to this. It's just, this is how things work, and it's okay. It's okay. We can do it properly, or even though we just rant and rant and rant about it, or talk about it, or do the particular thing that we need to do, it just we're kind of used to it that there might be no action at all that might take place, but
Yeah.
everyone is trying to, or the other way around to fix these problems is way too expensive or not in the priority of us or the people around us. But there are also some alternatives that we do. It's not just all those things that are constituted to it. It's just we just wanted them, or those are unintentionally. Some are unintentional take place that it's not really connected to the culture itself.
So the general attitude
So
is
we
like
just
sort of, I can't control this, so I'm not going to like struggle against it. I'm just going to make the best of the situation and continue living my life, basically.
exactly, that's how people approach things here, but not everyone. It's just like you said, it's just a clash between modernity and the past, the traditional aspects. And
Yeah.
I think what we have here now is just it's more focused on the modernity rather than on the traditions. It's just um, uh, 2 to 3 more years, I think we might transition to modernity or much more. Just like you mentioned, you say that it might not be civilized, or I agree with it. Not exactly to the extent that I would say that it's not really civilized around here, but there are some aspects that should be constituted to be being civilized, but
Yeah.
it's not.
Well, I mean, it's not like any country's ever 100% fully civilized. I mean, look at America right now; it's kind of in shambles. So, but yeah, yeah, totally. And it's kind of how I wanted to end this episode because the only other questions I really had were all just about predictions and stuff, and I feel like we're kind of running up on our time anyway. So, I guess just to close out, what I want to know, Simone, is I don't know, just how do you feel about what's to come? Just general predictions, because the rest of my questions were just like specific predictions, but just in general, what do you think is going to happen next?
Uh, not to make it crappy or something, but there are more girls that he might met in the future. It just that's what made him say it. As I mentioned earlier, that this is what really unconsciously his desire or his form of drug. And there are more plot twists to come. Exactly with how Lina is. I thought that um, how the show will play, or until the last episode, Lina would be there, or it's just Meg and Lina trying to get through life. But it's a it's also a good thing that it doesn't focus on that. There are different take and turns that happened.
Yeah, yeah, and it's weird, but we'll see what happens. Well, I don't want. I'll save my judgment for when I actually see what goes on. But yeah, guys, that brings us to the end of yet another episode of the Imperial Tides podcast. And I don't know, Simone. I feel like this was a pretty fun episode. I mean, like just of the show and then of the podcast itself. Like I feel like not as much happened as I thought it would, but it's been fun. It's been an enjoyable little thing. I don't know. How do you think the discussion went, just in general?
The same with the last episode. I thought that is all get up really get us into the character that we needed in this particular show. The approach that we need to do it is not to take it more personally, or we have this kind of boundaries to put into this to make things work around here.
Yeah. And I think looking back, I appreciate episode 2 a lot more now because each episode's a different experience altogether. That's really interesting how the same movie can make you feel so many different ways. It sets a completely different atmosphere from part to part. So that's impressive, and I like that. But I definitely prefer this more to the super political stuff. But that's just me. But anyway, anything else you wanna say before we sign off for the day?
Let's look forward to how will the series or also this podcast will pave through its way or made it out through its
Yeah, let's see what happens next. We still got 11 more parts to go. So anything.
9 episode.
Yeah.
11.
Yeah. So that's gonna be something. Cool. Well, thank you guys for watching. Drop your contributions down in the comments section below if you want to have a discussion. That's what we're kind of doing here. That's always what I've imagined the series to be. It's just kind of like it's like you go watch a movie with your friends and then you sit down and you talk about it for a couple hours or so or whatever. It's just that's kind of how I see it, but with a little more structure maybe. Hopefully we've been able to give you guys a good show or whatever. But until next time, stay tuned and bye, peace.